This podcast is brought to you with limited interruption by Rudy Luther Toyota. Whether looking for an exciting brand new Toyota, a certified pre-owned vehicle, or getting quality routine maintenance and service for your vehicle, Rudy Luther Toyota is the place to go. Rudy Luther Toyota, the southeast corner of 394 and 169 in Golden Valley. Subscribe to the podcast Beyond Politics. They host some of the biggest names and smartest minds. Beyond Politics is from a former Democratic congressman who helped ignite Barack Obama's campaign and a former campaign manager and political columnist. They go beyond the usual chatter on politics, news, science, and books. It's politics and everything beyond. On Beyond Politics, subscribe wherever you get your podcast.
Program may be pre-recorded.
Broadcasting live on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and in the evenings on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. It is the Matt McNeil Show for your Friday. Good to have you with us today. Matt and Patrick back after a second day. Patrick, you can attest to this. I'm having a little cobwebs I got to shake off a little bit here, aren't I?
The good old post-vacation vacation.
You saw this. You witnessed this. 3 times I read the month of August, and I said July.
It does happen, unfortunately.
I am just, you know what it is? It's all that smoke from that fire I inhaled while I was out in California with the forest fire. Just, as a matter of fact, I should mention, this is actually a pretty big deal. And wherever we went in California, this was like the topic du jour because of how this fire started. The Park Fire in California now ranks as the state's 4th ever largest blaze on record, surpassing the SCU Lightning Complex fire from 2020. Records show how a mixture of long-term climate change, short-term weather conditions, and land management can combine to produce a rapidly spreading and massive blaze. As of Friday morning, the Park Fire had burned 397,629 acres, and it was only 24% contained, passing the SCU's Lightning Complex fire, which burned 396,625 acres. The fire is part of a string of recent mega fires in the Golden State and is expected to grow further. The fire, all besides one of the 20 fires, biggest wildfires recorded in California, occurred after the year 2000 per the state's Department of Forestry and Fire Protection data, which, by the way, is actually quite good. They got a lot of good information. If you are ever out in California and you ever start getting a little worried about that, wondering like if the parks are going to be closed or something like this, you go to the state of California. They've got actually all that information out there for you. 7 of the 8 largest fires on record in the state have occurred since 2020. The Park Fire has grown with a rarely seen swiftness, having started on July 24th, allegedly by an arsonist. So what apparently this guy had done is set a car on fire and basically drove it into a ravine. And I don't know if he thought he was going to get away with something like this or if he just thought the car would burn and that would be it. But needless to say, months of record heat and dry weather combined with vegetation growth after last winter's heavy rains and mountain snows has provided abundant fuel for the fire to burn. In addition, the blaze erupted and moved through areas that have not burned for decades, leaving timber vulnerable to ignition. Climate whiplash features sudden oscillations between drought and flood, is worsening in California as the climate warms. The trend is likely to continue, studies show, and it may create conditions that are ideal for more large wildfires in the future, including the season. The Park Fire grew at a staggering rates of more than 1,000 acres per day, particularly during the last few days of its ignition. The fire front where flames advanced on forest and communities was set to as 35 miles at times. A rotating plume of smoke was also occasionally observed, towering about 30,000 feet. It will go down in history as not just the hottest July on record for many cities in the West, particularly California, but the hottest month of any record since records began. The National Weather Service Sacramento office said on Twitter that the preliminary data showed that all of our monthly official climate sites recorded their hottest July ever in California, in the Sacramento area, and that's the Sacramento Valley, if I'm not mistaken. I was in the San Joaquin Valley, which is the one on the south side, kind of on behind Oakland that way. But needless to say, it's a mess, and it really is. I I was somewhat stunned when the forest fire smoke came in that one day we were out at Ridgecrest over by Death Valley in the Mojave. And what was bizarre about it was realizing this isn't any third world country where some evil dictator, is in cahoots with the industries and is, toxifying and poisoning the people, and they just have to deal with it. This is supposedly the United States, and because of this crisis, you clearly are taking years off of people's lives, making them live in this smoke-hazed obnoxiousness. I mean, ugh. Like I said, everyone was talking about it because that's what that California is. Which brings me to the first thing I want to talk about today, because there is a real question that started to come across my mind as I drove around California. And when, of course, obviously, I was in liberal San Francisco, Dan. You want a good time, man. Well, not your car, but you want a good time. San Francisco will take care of you, my friend. That is a good town. But, of course, obviously, to go visit the national parks, I have to venture away from the coastline and head inland, and we did. And we went through, once again, these are the red districts, the red areas where the California Republicans are. I saw, after last weekend's St. Cloud rally in Minnesota with Trump and, Johnny Maybelline over there. By the way, let's make that happen. Hashtag JD Vance's Johnny Maybelline. Anyway, hey, I love goth, man. Anywho, they were in town in St. Cloud, and I had multiple people say this year is very different in red rural Minnesota, where Trump was obviously trying to appeal to. And they said, you're not seeing the Trump flags. And I know what he's talking about, and you get this in Illinois and too, in Wisconsin too. You drive out into the country and you'll all of a sudden see a mobile home with 40 Trump flags flying. Or you see the guy that basically has bought a car dealership sized Trump flag and put it on his barn. We've all seen that. They're saying no, you're not seeing that nearly as much as you used to. Sure, a few, but not as much. Which brought up an interesting discussion that we were having is this a case where the Trump enthusiasm has changed? Or, I mean, are the Trump fans, especially with the Project 2025 stuff, are they themselves realizing, I don't know if I want my name on this at this point? That's where it seems to going. Is that what's causing them to not put up their Trump flags? Or is it money? Because these are people who sit out there all the time as they've got, 16 Trump flags in their front yard, proudly bragging about the 17th one they just bought, and at the same time saying, and I can't afford health care. Really? Have you thought about selling the flags? Maybe they've just bottomed out. They literally have spent every bit of excess money they have, and it's all gone, and, they've all, given it to Trump. I noticed this as I was going across in these Republican areas of California. There was one electric billboard that had a Trump ad on it. There were 2 or 3 businesses, and I covered a ton of ground. I went across the San Joaquin Valley, up the Sierra Nevadas, through the parks, on the backside of the parks. And one of the things I've always said about the parks, and we noticed this when I was down there, is that around the parks themselves, they know where their bread is buttered. You don't see a lot of politics around the national parks. They don't want people not going to the parks because that's a lot of money for those communities. So you get into the communities around the parks, like I was in Three Rivers, which is by Sequoia and Kings Canyon. I didn't see one Trump flag. I didn't see anything like that. And I'm not saying that they're all Trump supporters or Republicans there, but you'd think you'd see a little bit of that out when you get out into the rural parts of the state. Nothing. Because the national parks, like I said, they know how the communities around those parks know where their bread is buttered. So they don't want to alienate on anyone, and that's kind of the way they do it. But when I was going across, just these large swaths of farmland or, high desert or low desert, depending on where I was at, I didn't see Trump flags. You didn't see them. I think we saw like two. One was on a pumping company's site, and like there was one on one guy's house, but we just didn't see them. So I started thinking about, okay, what makes a California Republican a Republican? And you start running through the things which seem to be universal. And once again, I don't want anyone trying to imply I'm painting with a wide brush. There are good old-fashioned Republicans everywhere that are, whether it's because they just love Trump, if they're these old-school, fiscal conservative, people out there, although those have dwindled. The moderates have pretty much all become Democrats at this point. There are people out there who are racist and bigots, and that's why they vote Republican. That is truth. That's a truth. But if you're trying to understand a part of the country, you try to understand where this is coming from. What is the base core of the argument for the people here on why they vote this way? And the first thing I said was, well, I wonder if immigration, because obviously that's a major tentpole issue for many of the Republicans. But not really. There are many communities in California where the Spanish and English population has pretty much merged, where you go through these, towns where they voted Republican, and there are more Spanish signs than there are English signs on the businesses. There are, you see a lot of Americans of, Spanish, Mexican, Latin American descent through the communities. It doesn't seem to. I'm not saying there isn't the racism, but this seems to be kind of encouraging. As a matter of fact, somewhat attractive as you go through these towns. You get this real feeling that you are someplace different. And I talked to one guy about farming, and he said, oh, yeah, these families, many of them are American citizens, but they have family members who themselves are still back in Mexico or some other country. And, once or twice a year, the entire family comes up here, works on the farm. The owner of the farm, generally a white guy, loves it. They have big parties. They send them all back home. They say, come on back next year. That's how they take care of their crops. That's how they do it. So, it didn't seem to be. I mean, obviously, they seem to understand the value of the immigrant labor force. And so that kind of was a strike against it. And they also, as well, a lot of these farms are dependent on people from these liberal cities coming on out there and buying their product just like on fruit stands and stuff like that. So I don't think it's nearly immigration in California. I mean, so obviously, once again, not trying to paint with a wide brush, but when you get out there and you see it for yourself, that doesn't seem to be their cause du jour. I'll talk more when I come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
The Powderhorn Art Fair is celebrating 33 years of community and local art on the weekend of August 3rd and 4th. This year's event will be the biggest yet, with a record number of artists.
It is the Matt McNeil Show on your Friday. Good to have you with us today, 952-946-6205. So what makes a California Republican a California Republican? Which makes them Republican? And although, once again, I have no doubt that there are places where, and individuals where immigration is still a trigger word for them, you get out into these communities, and there seems to be this embracing of immigrants, not only of Mexico, South America, Central America, South America, but also, obviously, there's on the West Coast, there's a strong Asian population too. It just didn't seem like it was nearly as big of an issue there as you see, especially in places where, like in places where there isn't nearly the immigration they think there is. where basically Republican governors scream about, it's an invading force. These people, many of them, first of all, American citizens, and many of the people that come in from other countries to work for them are loved and have been doing it for decades. So, that doesn't seem to be the trigger point for Republicanism. So what else could it possibly be? I thought to myself a little bit about this because I said, okay, is it oil? Is it one of those things where it just, because obviously California used to be, I've seen There Will Be Blood, great movie. But if there used to be a strong oil industry there. It's not nearly as strong as it was. Is this oil? No, once again, not exactly, because you get there, especially when you get out to the drier parts of the state. Solar power and wind power are serious cash cows out there. We passed solar power farms out in these rural Republican areas, which were massive, and big signs saying proudly supplying solar power for Southern California, stuff like that. Just really, so it's not that. So it's not immigration. It's not drill, baby, drill. Climate change? Well, I can tell you right now, those people, those Republicans, they're on the front lines of climate change with these forest fires. So, and no, I don't think anyone there is necessarily defining that climate change is a myth anymore when they're going out at night and they're, every breath they take in is an entire carton of Camel Wides. It really is a hard existence, and they can't deny that this is not something that was normal until everything started drying out. And plus, you go past all their lakes. They're even still with the rain that they got in the last few years, all their lakes are still way below where they're supposed to be. So it gave me some time as I was driving around to see if I could figure out what makes California Republicans a Republican. And I came up with about 5 things here that seem to be bedrock tentpole issues for California Republicans. The first one is a weird one, especially with the whole, they clearly think climate change is real. They don't recycle. It's been a long time since I've been to any part of this country where there isn't at least a glass and paper recycling next to regular trash. You get out into these Republican areas of California, do you have recycling here? Nope, we don't. You want to do that? You can take it into the park. They'll let you recycle up there, but we're not going to do that. And you're like, okay. You remember that whole thing about the forest fires? Yeah, never mind. They seem to be militantly against recycling. And I don't know how their setups are in their communities. Maybe if they're one of those places where the town basically says, we're not going to have a municipal garbage service. We're going to have people pay for their own, and then people basically opt not to do the recycling. Maybe that's what the case is. But it was interesting that once you got out of San Francisco, which, by the way, had like 20 bins in everyone's house. Okay, this is food waste, but it looks like it came from a grain. Oh, that one over there. That sort of thing. You separated out seriously in San Francisco. But once you got into the Republican areas, no one recycled it, which was really weird. The second thing, and this one made me chuckle. So we keep driving down the road in California in these Republican areas where these farm trucks are coming on out. Now, if you are in the great state of Illinois or the great state of Minnesota and Wisconsin, sure, fine, I'll throw you in there. If you're in one of our states and you are moving a produce product to market, what does it look like? It's basically you put it in the truck, you cover it up, you drive it to the market, ta-da! See, simple, easy, Not talking, obviously, like dairy, but just like grains or fruits or produce or whatever the case may be. You put it in a truck, cover it up, send it off to the market. Not in California. They have trucks running down the highway, not covered. And fruit and vegetables are flying all over the freaking place. Like crazy. We were going down one of the highways, and they're like potatoes come flying. Potatoes! Those will do some freaking damage at 60. They're bouncing out of the back of the truck like, okay, we don't need this extra 10 pounds of our inventory. I couldn't believe it. You go down the roads, and yeah, you start seeing it. It's like tomatoes and apples and oranges that just bounced out of trucks. And this must be something of the area, like, how dare you tell me I have to, safely and securely, make sure my produce isn't bouncing up and down the interstate. I don't get it. It just isn't a business model. You don't think you'd want to waste so much of your product, but you can make yourself a nice salad, by the way. If you follow the right trucks, lettuce, okay, let's get behind that one. Oh, yeah, I'm not in the mood for pecans or anything. But, dear God, what is wrong with you people? Cover that up, man. Ugh. So that's the second one. The third one is one that this is a tent pole wherever you are. Jesus! That's right. Not that there aren't Jesus people everywhere. Of course there are. It's the in-your-face Jesus that you get in Republican parts of California. It's the signs, people's like, God bless you. God bless you. I didn't sneeze, but okay, fine. And by the way, once again, religious disclaimer. I'm Christian, all right? I am. We go to church. You do or don't do whatever it is you do or don't want to do. I'm not here to convert anyone. I'm not here to do anything like that. I'm just saying that's what the deal is. So you get this kind of in-your-face Christianity, and I don't know if it comes from the feeling of those, dens of sin that's Los Angeles and San Francisco, probably. But they do it a lot. Actually, I do have a theory on this, and I'll start this and I'll finish it when I come back from the bottom of the hour break. But my theory is a great example of this. I was in a town. I'm not going to say which one it was. It was not a nice town. You could tell this town had a lot of problems. And one of the things that we were doing was we were packing lunches into the national park. So I had to go into this town and get bread and cold cuts, stuff like that. And I am in there. And as I am in this area, once again, you're passing this dystopian version of society which exists in these Republican areas, where it's the wealthy up high on a hill looking down at the poors and the meager below them. I'll talk more about this when I come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show here on your Friday. Broadcasting in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the afternoons on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show, once again on your Friday. Nice to have you with us. 952-946-6205. So what was I talking about in regards to conservative towns? It's something you see in areas where Republicans have been in charge now for 40, 50 years. And they basically, at a local level, have handed everything to a small handful of people at the expense of everyone else. The most common example of this I see is Rapid City, South Dakota. If you've never been there, obviously Mount Rushmore is out that way. There are some national parks out that way. If you've not been, you should go see. But one of the things I'll prep you for is that wealthy people on the hill looking down on the poors down below. You drive into Rapid City, and I think the town is Box Elder. There's another town there, Box Elder. And the first thing you will notice is not just a few mobile homes, but an obscene amount of cheap mobile home neighborhoods throughout the entire cities. Down, where people are living in, not the nicest conditions, especially for a place that gets a pretty strong winter. And it clearly shows there's not a lot of money trickling down to them, although that's what they've all been promised. This money's going to trickle down to you, as the people that tell them that laugh and laugh and laugh. And what's happened after 50 years is you've gotten this world where there's a handful of very wealthy people in those communities up on their houses, usually on a hill or on a rise, very nice so everyone can see it. and everyone else is there. And the mentality that they tell you, the conservatives will tell you, they'll keep telling you this is, well, if you work hard, someday you may be up there. And what they don't tell you is there's no chance in hell you're going to get up there. You might get into a more decent townhome in your community, but the system is rigged, courtesy of the Republicans, to where these towns basically have a haves and a have-nots area, and the have-nots is most of the people. And that is Republican policy. That is how they do things. It is making sure a handful of them get everything at the expense of everyone else. And you see that in California, too, in these Republican towns, in these areas where they have been proudly voting Republican since Reagan, and even before with Nixon, is you see these fairly squalor-like neighborhoods that are not very nice, are fairly run down. The vast majority of the town is that way. And then there's that one gated neighborhood that you see over there. In towns like that, one of the things I've noticed is you get this, when I'm bringing this back to the Jesus thing, you hear a lot about it. You hear a lot about Jesus, but not as really as kind of a spiritual enlightening, but more as a phrase from the individual who says it, that is the only hope that they have left. That their God, their religion will somehow come down to their fairly dismal lives and will save them from themselves, as opposed to realize maybe we should be voting Democrat at this point. And that is something that is really kind of hard to watch, because you want to look at these people and it's like, you do see this, right? I mean, if I take you to a more democratic city, I'm not saying there aren't some bad parts, but it's not like this. It's not where it's the haves and the have-nots, and pretty much everyone who's not the 5 or 6 haves is a have-not. You do understand this, but they can't see it. I was in this grocery store, and I was in this town, and I'm going through and getting the stuff for sandwiches. And the first thing I noticed was and this is a national chain store, by the way. The first thing I noticed was on the audio, where you usually hear, hey, ice cream is, $1 off, pick it up. And then they play some Muzak or, something from the 80s, which, by the way, hurts me at the core whenever I hear that nowadays. But you get, these little messages about, save money on pistachios or something. And then here's a hit from Billy Idol. That's not what they were playing in this store. The entire audio was, are you having trouble affording groceries? We have a program here that can help you afford some groceries. Please check with us if you need help with groceries. This local town has some programs to help you if you can't afford food. Do you know how dystopian it sounds to walk through a grocery store and that's the constant message you hear? That there is enough people in this town who can't even afford groceries, thanks Republicans, who basically have to have this on a running loop. Go to the register. I pay for my things. And the woman looks at me, very sincere woman. I'm guessing 30, 32, something like that. She says, well, God bless you. I hope you have a really good day. Well, thank you very much. I'm not, thank you. Okay, fine. And as I was walking back, I realized the way she said it wasn't as a, kind of friendly gesture, but was more of a plea from an individual who was just trying to give out some positivity in her day. That's the kind of Jesus you see in Republican areas across the country. It feels like it's much less about religion and Christianity and far more about, I hope you win the lottery. Because the lies they've been told for 50 years that eventually this will trickle down, and if you just work hard enough, eventually you'll make it. They see it every day. They see it in their neighborhoods. They see it in their houses. They see it in their health. They see it in their lifestyles. They see it that is a lie, but yet they still cannot bring themselves to say, well, maybe I should stop voting for the guys that are making my life like that. Nope. They fall back into this version of Christianity, which is more of a, when is my day going to come? I hope I can just give some positivity today. So that's one of the other elements I noticed about California Republicans was that version of Christianity, which I've seen in other Republican areas as well. Another major temple. So the three things I would say: recycling, not covering up your produce as you drive it down the highway, okay, and this version of Jesus where you see in Republican communities where the Republicans have absolutely screwed over the individuals who live and work in those communities for decades. Out there, one of the more very specific ones is water. Now, I said this yesterday on the show. Yes, you can pretty much grow anything in the Central Valley of California. It's lots of sunshine. It's warm temperatures. One slight little hitch. Of course, it was the desert for a long, long freaking time. And, for the same people that say, trust Jesus. Well, Jesus didn't put water there, okay? So, isn't that kind of contradictory to your entire narrative? Yeah, trust Jesus. Well, outside of this, we're going to change that around. And the fights in California over the water are undeniable. I mean, I saw signs. You've ever driven in like southern Illinois or northern Minnesota, and you'll see that the guy that's done his hand-painted sign, it's Joe Biden is trying to take my mailbox, that sort of thing. Is he? Really? That seems like a small petty crime, really, for a president of the United States. But all he has to do, by the way, is say, hey, it's official duty, and there's not much you can do about it. So thanks, Supreme Court. Anywho, but you see that. You see those signs. I saw tons of those signs across California where it's like, Gavin Newsom is trying to dehydrate us. They didn't say it like that, but you kind of get the impression. It's, you need to give us our water rights back. Dude, you're in the desert, you idiots. Have you seen Iowa? There's rivers on both sides of that state. They grow tons of stuff there. Go! They don't seem to understand the concept of the Midwest. It just is this idea that everything has to be grown in this desert area, and now they've set this, let's just be honest, insanely irresponsible agricultural model in play. And now all of a sudden things are drying up, and they're all upset because why can't we have more water? I don't care how many people are dying of dehydration in the large metro. Those liberals can take care of themselves. We need to keep our own water. Which, by the way, they're not keeping their own water. They're stealing it from somebody else at that point. I mean, it is that bad out there. So there's that. There's the water rights. That's the fourth thing I noticed. But the final thing, and this is the most universal Republican standard that you see out there and you see everywhere. It's this idea that they want the quality of life. Because one thing I will say about California is the state of California does spend a lot of money in these communities. I mean, some of the roads out in the middle of nowhere were exceptional. I mean, clearly a lot of money being spent to get a handful of people from one desert community to another desert community. You've got a good college system there, and I think my wife had mentioned to me that I think that if you're in California, that state California college system, at least the tuition might be free if you're in California, which is a great thing. So you have, and as well, you have this, especially for any of the farmers who are within, say, an hour of the the West Coast major cities, you have a lot of people who, need those, consumers coming out on a regular basis. So they've got a lot of spending that they do out there. I mean, a lot of these communities, they have, good Wi-Fi, they've got good utilities. in a state which is rampant with earthquakes too, which is just amazing. They want all this stuff. They want that quality of life. They want the safety and security that they have become accustomed to in a democratic state, thanks to the democratic people of those liberal bastions of San Francisco and Los Angeles who keep basically making sure that everyone gets taken care of statewide. They just don't feel as if they should pay for it. That is the key. That is your standard Republican today. If I could give one thing that I would identify a Republican from coast to coast, it's that single mentality, that they want the same exact lifestyle that they've got. They want their Social Security. They want their Medicaid, Medicare. They want their roads cleared. They want good power. They want clean parks. They want quality schools. They just honestly feel as if they themselves should not have to pay for that, but still be able to get all of the benefits of what your tax dollars pay for. And in states like South Dakota, which I brought up earlier, where you do have this Republican leadership where they have cut that down. Well, the quality of life up there kind of sucks. It really kind of does. I'm not saying there aren't a few nice restaurants. I'm not saying there aren't some nice people. I'm just saying I've been to South Dakota. I'm very content in the Twin Cities. I'm very content out here. Yes, it costs a little bit more out here, but I don't have to have every vegetable in my life deep fried served with ranch dipping sauce. How about I say it like that? You bring this up to them, and I talked to a few of them, and I just sort of said, you don't want your taxes, you don't want to pay taxes, but you want the quality of life. Well, why don't you move to one of these other states that, you can get away with that? I ain't leaving California, and there's where they give up the ghost. That's where they give it up. They know they've got a great quality of life there, minus the insane amount of forest fire smoke they have to inhale, that they don't want to leave that. They understand they've got a pretty decent state that does seem to take care of its residents, unlike Texas, unlike Florida, unlike a lot of the Republican states in this country. And they had storms that hit South Dakota. They don't have any money. They have no money because they used all the money to send National Guard troops down to the freaking Texas border. They don't have the money to take care of their own citizens. That is the greatest give up of all time. So there you go. My analysis of the California Republican. Enjoy. Bon appetit. Take a break. Come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
1951.
It is the Matt McNeil Show. Vice President Kamala Harris officially locked up the Democratic presidential nomination on Friday after receiving the support of a majority of Democrats' convention delegates in a virtual roll call vote. The expedited roll call vote, which began on Thursday, more than 2 weeks before the convention is set to begin in Chicago, does not conclude until Monday evening, but the Democratic National Committee said in a call with supporters on Friday afternoon that Harris had already crossed the majority threshold needed for the official nomination. I want to make sure no one else is running, are they? I mean, even Dean Phillips kind of got out of the way. Joe Manchin was smart enough to realize he was about to get really embarrassed if he tried to become a Democrat again and run again, because he would have been annihilated. So, I'm sure there's some fringe people out there, but it's interesting because in the day after Biden, announced he wasn't going to run, what ended up happening where all of a sudden there were people up on social media who were, oh, well, this person, I want this person to be there. I want this person. Well, that person didn't want to run. I saw Bernie a few times and Bernie Sanders was like, no, I'm not running. And at that point, one of the things I want to give credit to the Democrats on is there was a lot of people who very quickly came out and was like, I'm not running. And, and I think that kind of deflated that because I think a lot of that was, Republicans in disguise that were trying to create chaos, and the Democratic Party didn't buy it. It didn't last very long. I mean, there's now some, hubbubs about the potential vice presidential picks, but that's about it. The nomination reflects Democrats' determination to project unity following Joe Biden's historic July 21st decision to not seek a second term. The weeks preceding Biden's announcement were marked by chaos and inter-party dissension. Biden endorsed Harris shortly after withdrawing, spurring a wave of relief and excitement among Democrats and fueled a massive fundraising haul for Harris. That's just, it was $300 million plus over July. Huge. Harris, who broke barriers as Biden's second in command, nonetheless faces an uphill battle to do that once again now that she's the Democratic Party's presidential nominee. Basically, she grew up in Berkeley, California, represented her home state in the U.S. Senate since 2017 before ascending to the vice presidency. Over the course of 4 years in Congress, upper chamber, she focused on hunger, housing, infrastructure, climate change. Pretty standard Democratic stuff there. Here's where it was interesting. She was a prosecutor. Harris developed a reputation for tough on crime moderate that elicited criticism from progressives during her 2019 presidential run. Among other controversial tactics, she advocated for imposing fines up to a year of jail time for parents of truant school children, which led some of the state's counties to jail single mothers dealing with economic hardship. Harris had pioneered the policy as a district attorney of San Francisco from 2003 to 2010. She ascended to the post after ousting a more progressive incumbent in a Democratic primary. One of the things that I found to be interesting about the mentality, because obviously I was there when she became the nominee, there were a lot of people in San Francisco, that said they do not like her because of how aggressive and how Republican-like she was as the city attorney and the district attorney of San Francisco, as well as also the state attorney general. But they all said the same thing. I'm not happy with her, but if she's the nominee, I'm voting for her. That's just that. And sometimes I think when you see the excitement of the rest of the country out there, I think that kind of resonates as well to a point. So I think, will they be less angry about her being the presidential nominee? I don't know. Needless to say, there's a lot of people that are pretty much overlooking any of that stuff now as they look at her. And I just don't, and frankly, the person that Kamala Harris is today, I don't see her pushing any of those policy issues forward. And whether that's she's evolved on the issues or they were just theater issues to basically, win over a certain demographic. I don't know. But needless to say, she's, there is a lot of enthusiasm about her. Not so much for Trump. Moments before this, by the way, if you want to see anything about as I constantly rip on how bad the media has gotten, pay attention to this story because there's something that's not being said here that needs to be pointed out. Moments before President Trump took the stage at the National Association of Black Journalists annual convention in Chicago on Wednesday, the organization's president was called back to address an issue. Trump did not want to be fact-checked live and was refusing to go on stage. So here is Trump backstage telling this group at that moment that I'm not going to go out there if you guys fact-check me. Okay, so he's trying to push this at the last minute. You remember when he came on out and said they were having technical issues? I'm glad you got that resolved. That wasn't why he was late. He was late because, the great orange blob was having a little 5-year-old temper tantrum about you guys can't correct me when I lie on stage. Trump's team said, well, you cannot fact check. He's going to take the stage. He's not going to take the stage if you fact check, said Ken Lemon, the president of the NABJ. The Q&A with the president was delayed more than an hour before he eventually joined the panel. At the time, Trump blamed the delay on audio problems. That was not the problem. He did not want to be fact-checked out there as he was. Now, Joy Reid, she basically brought out a great point that this group should be somewhat ashamed because he never came on that committee to basically answer questions. And that was clear from the first moment he got out there and started bad-mouthing the moderator and going after her. He only went out there so that he could take the clips from him yelling at black journalists and take them back to the racist white people and say, see, I'm keeping the black people in line. That's what he came to do. And I understand you get the opportunity to do this, but the second that he didn't want to do the fact check, the second that all of a sudden he started insulting the moderator, okay, if you're going to be like this, you're going to be a little child, then we're done here. And that should have been the end of it. But the one thing I want to point out here is this. They basically stood up to him. This group did stand up to him and say, no, we are going to fact check you if you say something wrong. How many news outlets in this country, when Trump does the same thing to them, cowers and said, okay, we won't fact check you? Please, this is standard operating procedure for him. Chicago, have a great weekend. Minneapolis, St. Paul, hour 2 up next. Hour number 2 of the show here on your Friday. Matt Patrick here. Coming up a little bit later on, Tabitha Montgomery is going to join us, the executive director for Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. The Powderhorn Art Fair is this weekend, so we'll give you some ideas of fun things you can do over there. If you haven't been, it is an absolute hoot. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. I got, should I do an Olympics update here, Patrick? Is that something that you think we should do? Give the people an update on what you should watch for tonight?
Yeah, be careful, though. Don't spoil it, since I think NBC will air that this evening, some of the bigger things.
Do you think I care about NBC?
No.
Do you know why I'm mad at NBC right now?
Why?
I'm telling you why. I'll tell you exactly why. Where are the freaking timpanis? I mean, okay, all right, here. Boom, 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 boom. Where is that? That's the Olympic song that they play at the beginning of their coverage. They're not playing it. They got some John Tesh crap that they're playing now.
Oh, no.
Where are the freaking timpanis, NBC? Give me my freaking timpanis.
Give them back.
There are multiple times when I was out in Yosemite, I just happened to, you kind of look out and you see this gorgeous view, and I expect to see some guy in a tux with some timpanis there, just kind of to add a little ambiance. It would have been nice. Bring back the timpanis. All right, I mean, I'll just give it to you. We didn't really win squat today. The one that, of course, of local interest was the BMX racer, that the Willoughby out of St. Cloud. Yeah. No. As a matter of fact, we kind of got skunked everywhere in the pool, BMX. I mean, some of the team sports. The 3-on-3 basketball got a win. Volleyball team, the men's volleyball, the indoor volleyball team, that seems to be doing. They took care of business against Japan, which is pretty good. But yeah, we're still at 9 gold medals, and some of these other countries are starting to lap us. Now, I understand. I, first of all, enjoy it. I'll probably watch it tonight. I find it to be somewhat enjoyable. But I will also say it is hard. I mean, hey, it's great. We've got a ton of silvers and a tons of bronze. Clearly, we are the country that has the better athletes overall. It also does not escape me that the rest of the world, outside of a handful of these athletes, all train and work out and compete in the United States and then go back to their country to carry their flag. And that's fine. That's what you want to do, and that's the thing. But, you know, the reason why you are good is because you come here and you compete with American athletes to make yourself better. And that's just something that seems to happen. Not everyone. I mean, there's that Hungarian swimmer who stays out in Hungary, and good for him. And, you know, you can't deny his success. But it is hard, and we're going to bounce back. I mean, track and field is always pretty good for the United States and stuff, but, you know, they're kind of, you know, I'm used to them kind of dominating the pool. I'm used to them doing some other things, and they just don't seem to be doing it. And it's so funny. They brought in all these X Games. They brought in the skateboarding. They brought in the BMX. In the winter games, they brought in the snowboarding out there. And the first thing was, oh, yeah, give us all those gold medals. And the rest of the world is kicking our butt. Now, I would make an argument don't get me wrong, athletes are athletes, they compete and stuff like this. But I think the culture of some of those sports in this country is very different than the culture in other countries, and I don't think that that's helping us. And we've seen that before, particularly with the snowboarders. When they start to lose, they just basically pack up all their stuff and take off because, I'm not here for this. I just want to go down and do some cool vibes down the slope, man. All right, well, why are you part of the Olympic team then? If you don't want to be competing for the Olympic team, why are you here? And they've kind of, it's hard. I think some of this stuff is the rest of the world's getting better at this stuff. And I think especially particularly skateboarding and snowboarding, I think that there is somewhat of the cultural vibe for those sports I don't think is helping us too much here in the United States. Well, it's hard to see. We still have the most medals, but China's got 4 more golds than we do now. France has got 2 more golds. Australia's got 2 more golds. Although, bringing up Australia, we do have the moment of the Olympics right now. The best thing that's happened at the Olympics Games. Patrick, did you see the bronze medal match between Australia and the United States in women's rugby?
I did not hear about this yet.
You did not hear about this. I want you, well, not during the show. Well, okay, fine, during the show. But, at some point, I want you to go to YouTube and type in U.S. Australian Rugby Olympics. You will see, if I told you it happened, you would think it's contrived. Now, this just did not happen today. This happened like 4 days ago. The United States, the last time we medaled in rugby was back in like 100 years ago, before American football kind of took all the rugby players in this country and turned them into football players. Back then, we won the gold medal in rugby back in like 1908 or something like that. Since then, it's been a bit of a dry spell. We got a bronze. We got a bronze because, and I'll explain this the best I can about rugby. Rugby is different from American football, that wherever you cross into to score, that's kind of where you have to try to kick the extra point. Now, Australia should have schooled the United States. They actually had, earlier in the game, a score that they just dropped. It was an easy score, and the woman that was going to catch the ball and run it in, she just dropped it. But with less than a minute to go, Australia gets into the end zone and scores. But she scored on the very edge, on the sideline, which meant she had to kick the ball for the extra points from that position. And she missed. It's a very tough angle to hit it at. So it comes down to the United States has got one chance to win the game. They have to score on the final play. And then, of course, they have the ability to kick the extra point. And for some reason, the Australian rugby team became the Minnesota Vikings. They decided not to wrap the guy up. You got to wrap him up. You want to tackle him, you got to wrap him up. The one player for the United States just got through one block, got past another block. The other person just kind of pushed them, and she took off. And she sprints the entire length of the field, dives into the end zone right in the heart and the center of the goalposts, and then proceeds to just do a chip kick in. The United States wins bronze. I have heard from friends in Australia they are so angry about that right now in Australia, that the United States beat the Australian women in rugby. It was the bronze medal match. For us, it's not a sport that I think a lot of people care about, know that much about here, but it gave us, that is the moment of the Olympics. And Lindecki is fantastic. I love her, but, and of course, Simone Biles and the entire gymnastics team, but that was incredible. It's so contrived. It was kind of like when Suni Lee won the gold back in 2021, where she's done. All the Brazilian woman has to do is not step out of bounds on the floor exercise, and she stepped out of bounds like 4 times. And they come up, it's like, guess what? You just won gold medal. You wouldn't even think something like that would be possible. I love that moment. That was good fun. NBC, give me my damn timpanis, man. Boom, boom, boom. That's nothing. That is just gold, man. Don't give me this, it's time for keyboards with John Tesh, basketball. I don't need that, no. Do not need that. Speaking of things I do not need, health officials have been noticing a higher than normal number of rabid skunks. Is this something you just kind of walking down the street to them? Hey, is that a rabid skunk? They have seen a higher than normal amount of rabid skunks and cattle this spring. A typical year will have 3 to 5 sick skunks. The guy's name is Clum. Okay, so is this just some way to get a tongue twister in here? 5 sick skunks. Clum said as of August there have already been 12 infections. On average, Pepe Le Pew. It's not rabies is not an STD, is it? I mean, if you do see a French-speaking skunk, obviously you need to talk to a doctor. If anything's going to get me a lawsuit against me, that's Warner Brothers right now. They can't write that lawsuit fast enough. Stop implying our cartoon characters have STDs, McNeil. Sorry. He's just, there's nothing I could really criticize Pepe Le Pew, a guy who basically forces himself onto female skunks all the time. That was his bit. How could I ever criticize that? Anywho. On average, there's about 1 case of rabid cattle over the last decade, but so far in 2024, there's been 6 rabid cattle. Are the skunks biting the cows? That's not good. Rabies is fatal if untreated and is a disease that attacks the nervous system of mammals. The virus spreads through saliva and can be infected animal. Pepe. Most often as it bites others. This year, 24 people exposed to infected animals have been recommended to get rabies shots. Clum said. The disease is not most often spread by bats in Minnesota. Skunks also spread rabies, with the odorous critters often drawn towards homes and farms that leave food or for cats and other pets out in the open. In their infected state, skunks become fearless and aggressive. Oh, that's good. Approaching and biting much larger animals such as livestock. A report by the Minnesota Board of Animal Health said rabid skunks are likely to blame for the case of infected cattle this year. Incident reports of the Animal Health Board said the cattle infections in Rock County in March, Pipestone County in April, and Stearns County in May took place where skunks were seen or are known to be frequent, the report says. Okay, so safety tip, no French kissing the skunks, okay? That's going to go bad for you in a lot of ways. I mean, it really is. Safety tip, the more you know, rainbow emoji. Don't do that. That being said, be careful out there. I've had friends that have had to get rabies shots. That's not good, man. You don't want that. I will say, too, sometimes you've got to be careful. There are some critters in Minnesota. Now, badgers you don't want to mess with. They're pretty aggressive. Same thing with porcupines. We had a dog, a hunting dog we took out one time, and he got into a culvert, and there was a porcupine down there, and half its face with the things in there, and that was a pretty serious injury. But nothing gets a hunter angrier than having a dog that they have to put in the car with them get tagged by a skunk. And of course, it's obviously, you're not going to get the dog in the water to clean him off at that point. You just have to deal with that. Yeah, magnificent. That is a heck of, it'd be cool if we had that ability. I don't like the looks of you. Woohoo! Your business meeting's going bad. Let's play this out for a sec, okay? Your business meeting's going bad. Your presentation's not hitting all the high notes you were hoping for. Well, There's Phil from transportation. You're not a big fan of him. Just give him a little bit of a bang, and people will scatter. Successful presentation. The things you can learn from woodland creatures in Minnesota, huh? 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. We'll take a break. Come on back. Once again, coming up here towards the bottom of the hour, Tabitha Montgomery, the Executive Director for Powderhorn Park Association, and we're going to be talking about the Powderhorn Art Fair coming up this weekend. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. It's the Matt McNeil Show. AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. So a story that came across from Wisconsin that I think it piqued my interest because of my just recent trip to the national parks, and I'm a big fan of national parks, is this motion, this idea in Wisconsin that wants to take the Apostle Islands that sit off the south shore of Lake Superior and turn them into a national park. So, and once again, and one of the things I will talk about, and I can talk about with in regards to the national parks, is that I don't think they're going to build a bridge out to these islands. I don't know if that would be something even feasibly possible. But obviously, if you have a national park, even Isle Royal, which is a national park, that's the big island out in the middle of Lake Superior. You still have regular boats that go out there and tourists that can go on out there onto Isle Royal. It's a pretty rough trip out there, by the way. If you ever want to do that trip, you better be comfortable with being on a rocking boat, because you are going to get pushed around a little bit. Lake Superior, you don't mess with Lake Superior. But I find this to be an interesting idea, because there's a lot of people that have talked about how pretty that area is and it should be preserved. And I think about the most comparable, it might be a little like Acadia out in Maine, where you have this unique northern shoreline area that needs to it currently is somewhat preserved right now, but it would be preserved under the blanket of the national parks. We're really excited about this opportunity in the Apostle Islands, and really crown jewel, said Representative Tom Tiffany, Republican congressman serving Wisconsin's 7th. Tiffany has introduced legislation to change the area from a national lakeshore to a national park. And I saw this. There is a difference here in how that goes. I've talked about national forests, national lake shores, stuff like that. Those are out there. They're far less. It goes two ways. On one side, a national park like Yosemite or like the Grand Canyon or Zion, you get generally a welcome center. They'll have some trails that you can go on. They have maps and infrastructure that's built in there, and there's an accessibility there. And one of the things I thought was just amazing, particularly about Yosemite, was once again, here was a national park where no matter what your mobility issues are, you could get out and enjoy it. That is something that I think is truly wonderful. On the other side of that, though, and I very clearly can understand these concerns, is that you're bringing in a lot of people, you're bringing in a lot of tourists and stuff like this. Is this an area you want to do that with? I mean, can you still preserve it without it, keeping the natural beauty and integrity without it becoming too commercialized? And, sometimes the parks, it works, sometimes not as much. I will repeat what I said yesterday. I think it's an absolute criminal charge, frankly. We do not have Native Americans at every national park to talk about the thousands of years of history they had in the area before Whitey got there. And I think from coast to coast, you should have full-time Native American interpreters and historians and experts that can talk about everything in regards to the community and the area, in regards to the Native culture. And I think that should be the law of the land in this country. Now, that being said, because Native Americans do have a little bit of an issue with this, and I'm not going to deny that their concerns seem to be very, very legit here, especially when it goes back to this guy Tiffany. For some locals in Bayfield, though, the process is raising questions. It's boated and sailed. I've recreated there for 40 years, said Erica Peterson, a Bayfield local. Peterson may know the Apostles more than most. She's helped others experience the islands and even worked for the National Park Service in the past. I'm not entirely against it. I guess more against the process that wasn't included over 100 years of community and tribal involvement. It should have had a link to the public forum where the legislation was introduced, which is this Tiffany guy, this is a really big red flag. What are you doing that you're not talking to the local community about turning their community into a national park? Now, once again, I will say something I said before, I've said a few times. There are a lot of these communities, national parks end up being a cash cow for some of these communities. So there are some economic benefits to these communities. Mary Motif is a Bayfield County tourism director. She's concerned about the many aspects of the change, including indigenous treaty rights, especially since hunting would not be allowed as a national park. I absolutely would support it if it came along with additional resources. The park would need to be able to ensure the safety and experience of visitors. There's a statement that was put out here by Tiffany, his office. Indigenous treaty rights. Nothing in our bill does anything to alter or change existing treaty rights. We also consulted with the National Park Service before introducing the bill. He goes on to talk about, I'm not reading the whole thing he put out here. He talks about the infrastructure of the park. Historically, similar upgrades for national lakeshores and national parks, such as the 2019 reclassification of Indiana Dunes, have come with substantial increases in economic activity. For example, in 2018, when it was still a national lakeshore, Indiana Dunes had 101.75 million visitors who spent $77 million in nearby communities, which in turn supported around 936 jobs. By 2022, the national park visitation surged to 2.8 million, generating $141 million in local spending and supporting 1,600 jobs. So there are some benefits there, at least at that park, whether or not that would translate over. The problem here is this, and I'm going to read, this is a statement from the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Indians, who, once again, let's make sure they're part of any kind of discussion, but Tiffany doesn't seem to be there. Tribal officials have repeatedly presented questions and concerns about the bill to lawmakers and Tiffany's staff at the Capitol. However, the tribe has not received sufficient communication or information. Without the appropriate consultation from lawmakers, the tribe must oppose this bill in order to protect the best interests of the tribe. To the tribe's knowledge, there's been no environmental impact study, no economic impact study, no infrastructure impact study, no cultural and treaty rights impact study, and no mention of what specific federal fiscal resources this change would bring to the area. The tribe is open to working with lawmakers on issues that ultimately impact the tribe, its tribal membership, and our natural resources. However, the tribe cannot justify this bill to our community. And they've laid out, once again, Native Americans, the voice of reason here, because what do you mean you haven't done an environmental impact study, an economic impact study, an infrastructure impact study, cultural and treaty rights impact study? How in the world are you this irresponsible, Tiffany? Tiff? Seriously, how are you this irresponsible that you are suggesting taking a large swath of islands off the coast of Wisconsin and turning them into a national park without any sort of research on what this would do? And the fact that, once again, the people who have treaty rights in that area, you should be calling them, telling them they shouldn't be coming to you. You should understand the impact and importance of the treaty situation, and you yourself should be going to them, talking to them, making sure they completely understand everything, answering any questions they may have, taking their concerns, not with a grain of salt, but actual as concerns that need to be addressed. Once again, the tribe is not against this idea, but you doing it this way is brick stupid, Tiffany. And it doesn't, and beyond the tribe, it doesn't sound like anyone in the community has been talked to about this. And on one side of it, you'd say, well, the community could benefit because you definitely would be able to get more like I said, with Yosemite and these other places, he brings up Indiana Dunes, there is an increase of traffic. But I will say, you need to make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's. You're not over-promising. People's expectations would be put in at real. And sure, it might be a few extra jobs, and it might be there. But let's just go with the environmental impact study. Once again, how are you going to get people out to the islands if you're going to have national parks out there? Is it going to be a regular ferry service? How does that work? Will it interfere with native treaty rights? How does that work? These are not flippant, tiny little questions. These are major issues that need to be addressed prior to you introducing this bill. I'll give you a great example of this. It was down the national park, the Congaree National Park, which is in South Carolina. That went through a long process to become a national park. Just so happened they had some of the original bayou river wetlands still set aside that had not been sawed down by just a quirk of use, and were able to put it aside, and they realized we need to set this on a path. And it was like, I think they had the placard out there. I'm trying to remember. It was like a 30-year process to take it to a state park, to take it to a national forest, to then become a national park. That's what you should put into place. I don't know if you necessarily would want to do this in a way where it's just trying to quickly jam it through to give yourself a rah, I did well. And for God's sakes, once again, if I may, and I am not speaking for the Native American people. They don't need anyone to speak for them. I'm just talking to the white people out there. Start talking to them. Don't just be this arrogant jackass of the last few hundred years that thinks that you can just go in there and wow them and razzle-dazzle and it's going to work. Talk to them. They've got legitimate questions. They've got legitimate concerns. They should be part of the discussion, not an afterthought. And you should, and frankly, considering how much they're right about these things, I think you should go with what they say. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. When we come on back, Tabitha Montgomery, the executive director for Powderhorn Park Association, will talk about the art fair going this weekend. It's the Matt McNeil Show here on your Friday.
When you told me you...
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. Hopefully we're going to be talking with Tabitha Montgomery. Very busy out there setting up for the Powderhorn Park Art Fair. That is going to be going on once again. It's tomorrow and Sunday in Powderhorn Park over just south of Lake Street, just to the east of Chicago, if I'm not mistaken, in Minneapolis. They've done it for 33 years. That's been going on. One of the things, by the way, really interesting, I was talking to a guy in San Francisco, and I said, I'm from Minneapolis. He goes, oh, man, I love Minneapolis. He says, how do you guys get so many art fairs that are going on? I'm like, really? He said, yeah, man, you guys really highlight the arts. And that's interesting coming from San Francisco, which is an incredibly arty city. The amount of art galleries, art displays, art museums, just quality graffiti around the town. You know, the fact that they knew about all the stuff that goes up here was kind of interesting. I thought it was, a little badge of honor for MSP, I think. Anyway, that's one of them right there. Powderhorn Art Fair coming up here in just tomorrow and on Sunday. I did want to take a moment, and I think a lot of people have read about this yet, but just for anyone out there who hasn't, if Governor Walz ends up becoming the VP nomination. Now, do I think he will? I think Kelly is definitely out. I think I think because his labor record is not that good. The Shapiro guy, there are people that are trying to make Shapiro into this toxic pick, because apparently someone within Shapiro's administration had did some inappropriate, sexual conduct towards another employee, which the Shapiro's team dealt with. But the fact that it happened is upsetting to them. The statements I've read about it, he seems to have been very upset about it, and they seem to have dealt with it fairly, sternly. But that there are people that are trying to make that into an issue. I still think Shapiro is the kind of the odds-on favorite to be the possible nominee there. But we'll have to see. Anyway, but if Walz does become the vice presidential candidate, of course, Peggy Flanagan would become the governor, which would make her the state's first female governor. It'd be the first Native American woman to lead the U.S. state. Also, Walz would retain the governorship while campaigning with Harris, though he may face pressure to step down. He probably would step down, although he's not really going to be signing anything while he's there for sure. Flanagan, of course, a member of the White Earth Band of Ojibwe, and already the country's highest-ranking Native woman elected to an executive office. She was the Minneapolis School Board member for 4 years. Who would become the lieutenant governor? Well, that'd be the state Senate president, Bobby Joe Champion, would then rise to the lieutenant governor position. That would make it a 33-33 deadlocked Senate until they could fill Bobby Joe Champion's seat, because once again, it's a Minneapolis seat. It's going to go to the Democrats. So he would be the first Minnesotan on a major presidential ticket in 40 years. That would, of course, be Walter Mondale would be the last time that had happened. So there you go. A little information about what exactly would be taking place there. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. The 33rd Annual Powderhorn Art Fair is going to be going on this week at Powderhorn Park. Joining us right now, Tabitha Montgomery is the Executive Director of Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. She's kind enough on a very busy day, I imagine, to take some time to talk with us about how things are going. Hi, Tabitha. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. I feel like reading my mind, but it's a beautiful day. The weather is warm. Spirits are high. It's going to be a great event over 2 days, 10 to 5, Saturday and Sunday.
Now, how long have you been involved with this event?
Wow. So I've been with the organization now coming up on 9 years, and it was such a beautifully well-run, established event prior to that, since we're celebrating our 33rd this year. In a lot of ways, it runs like clockwork, a lot of foresight by the community. It was actually started by artists these many years ago who came together and said, you know what, we're going to celebrate local art and also regional artists in a very beautiful setting, 66 acres outdoor, and it's just been giving to the community ever since.
Well, and, it is one of those things where, you have those humble beginnings, and now it's become one of the major art fairs in the city here, and you do draw from a large part of the area here, and, I mean, that's a sign of the success you can't really deny there.
No, you can't. And I'm going to take it one step further. Not only locally, I mean, it's a lauded event just because I think the serene settings that we take place in. But, we attract artists from over, typically on average, 26 different states, 216 cities. And then they are juried in by a panel of, distinguished and awarded artists themselves. So it turns into this very beautiful thing. We don't allow generators, I got to say that, into the park, so it has this beautiful just tranquility as you walk around Powderhorn Lake. It's just an amazing time. It's family friendly. We have a whole family zone with all kinds of activity, painting, and some drumming that will be taking place at different times. I encourage everybody to check out the website for the details on that, because that's not every hour on the hour or on both days, but the lineup is stellar. And we certainly give credit to the artists who really make it possible, for all the vision and probably blood, sweat, and tears that they put into preparing so many pieces of artwork for this event.
Talk a little bit about that. How do you guys approach the artists that are coming on in here? Is it pretty much you want everything represented? You want every culture group, every type of art representative? How do you guys approach getting all these artists into the park?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think the art fair circuit, as I would call it, is a real thing. Like, there are people who this is how they present, this is how they show their artwork, their passion on canvas or off of a pottery wheel. We have over 25 different mediums that participate across those a variety of different categories. And so, honestly, I think that what ends up happening is the word has been out now for 33 years. And so there's a lot of different platforms that help us to let the artists know that the application process is open and when it closes. And like I said, we partner with other local artists who are serve as jurors, and not only to extend invitations to what tomorrow will be clearly close to 250 individual artists in some form or fashion here in the park. But then that on tomorrow, then those same jurors come back, and then they will be walking around scoring the artist again, not because you can really judge art, but so that we can, through their lens, provide some awards to those that they think are just best in show and that are just doing some stellar things in their particular category.
I want to bring in your sponsors here because there's an interesting element, and I do like this. Of course, I want to mention Star Tribune, Lake Street Council, our Car, EV Car Wash. You have as well the Sahan Journal. Love Sahan Journal; they're fantastic. And the CTUL. I'll go with that. It's just I don't speak.
That's short for say tool. I get it.
But I also want to mention that you have the League of Women Voters out there and the Minneapolis Election and Voter Services. Here it is, August. You guys are taking this event and also using it as an information gathering place for people with the election coming up. And that's a very solid idea. I'm glad those partners are with you on this one.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just part of being community, right? Art is a part of it. Our electoral system and process, certainly the general election, is a part of our community, undeniable in so many different ways. And ultimately, what we care about is people exercising their rights. And in this case, exercising their right to vote, understanding where they can vote, how they can vote, when they can vote, how they cannot vote. All of those types of points are important, especially when you have, and we expect to have probably close to 18,000 people who will join us over the next 2 days, and hopefully a little bit more since this weather just continues to give us so much sunshine and so much beauty. And I just want to give another shout out to the Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board. The team here is by far, hands down, the best parks crew that I have had the pleasure of working with and partnering with. Liz Krause, who is the director here, holds us down every year. Her team shows up smiling on their face. Teamwork is out here helping to keep the park beautiful and picked up over the next 2 days. I mean, everybody's working really hard to be in community with one another, not only, like you said, partnering with amazing folks like you just mentioned, the League of Women Voters and the Lake Street Council and so many others, but to celebrate the power of how we are connected through the arts, right? Especially as there's so many instances that people might want to convince you that we're not connected, that we shouldn't be connected, but in community they can reject that. Yeah. And then tomorrow and on Friday, and a shout out to the Uptown Art Fair who had to relocate this year on their behalf. They're down at Bachman's because of all the construction in South Minneapolis along Lake Street. Show them a little love if you have it in your schedule. For so many years, at one point it was the big three. There was the Loring Park and the Uptown Art Fair that took place on the same weekend, and maybe at some point we'll be able to figure out how to bring all that back together and put the wheels in motion. But until then, we certainly don't mind being considered a fan favorite and would love to see all of your listeners with us this weekend.
Well, and once again, you're talking about bringing people together. The art brings people together. I will also mention I have previewed your food choices. That brings people together.
Yes.
You guys got a nice setup. We should mention you're going to Powderhorn Park. You not only can see the art, but you got tons of food that's going to be out there, right?
Tons. I mean, at this point, I think if they hear me on your show, they might come after me if I don't mention them. But we have food in so many different categories. We got barbecue, we got Asian fusion, we got good old-fashioned American grill, we got hot dogs, we got pizza. I mean, it is going to be really a memorable, beverages, lemonade and ice cream and cookies and et cetera. I mean, the list goes on and on. Maybe our little personal homage to the state fair that will be opening up soon too. But I think as much as we know that art brings folks together, food brings us together, and certainly in a very community-centric neighborhood that is just trying to do the best we can to reflect what love looks like in action on a Saturday and a Sunday in late summer. It is our privilege to do so.
And I wanted to mention, you said something earlier about the Family Zone. There are going to be some events there. You want people to go to the website here, powderhornartfair.com, powderhornartfair.com. You can find out the more information. Talk a little bit more about the Family Zone, because it's not, you're going to have multiple things going on over there, right?
Oh, yeah. We have our partners who are also in South Minneapolis from the Hosmer Library. There will be some book readings. There will be a drum circle. So that's kind of an African drum circle, some cultural elements that's happening there. Face painting, henna. We have some other, I think, workshops happening. I think if I remember correctly, some people are helping you to build your own rattle or drum, some instruments of this nature.
Cool.
So it's just a variety of different things that will be taking place in the family zone throughout the weekend.
All right. So a lot going on, and you are going to, it looks like, tomorrow it's going to be a warm day. I'll be hitting the shaved ice booth. But it's going to be a warm day, but it looks like gorgeous weather for you tomorrow for sure. Hopefully that holds out for the whole weekend. So it's tomorrow and on Sunday. What are the hours over there for this?
We kick things off at 10 a.m. each day, and we close at 5 p.m. each day. So 10 to 5, Saturday and Sunday.
Powderhorn Art Fair, Powderhorn Park. Once again, it's just to the east of Chicago, just south of Lake Street. You know, it's a great location. You're going to have a lot of there, and you can find some. Don't undersell the art. That's one of the best part about art fairs. You can go find something there.
That's right.
A lot of stuff is going to be a lot of different price ranges. You might find something for your house. Go see that and enjoy. Tabitha Montgomery, once again, the executive director of Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. Tabitha, all my best. I really appreciate the time. I know how busy you are, so thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend out there, okay?
Oh, we appreciate the opportunity. Have a great show.
Take care. Thank you very much. Tabitha Montgomery, Powderhorn Art Fair. She doesn't have to. I'm not doing the heavy lifting today. She and her crew and the parks crew, they're all doing the heavy lifting. You know what they got out there for food, man? They got the corn on the cob with the cheese, the Mexican corn on the cob with the cheese on it, man.
Oh, I got to get out there for that.
God, I love that. I love that. There you go. Powderhorn Art Fair. I'll see you guys out there this weekend. I think I can try to hit that up. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Wrap up the show when we return. I'll get some dancing in here. Of course I will. It's the Matt McNeil Show on a Friday. AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Can I just say, I had a listener send me this lovely note because, obviously I've been talking about the trip out to the West, and this is what I do. I'm just one of these people that I'll talk about what I do, and hopefully you get some entertainment out of it, and that's just who I am. I don't try to be something I'm not, and so it's been. For me, we talked about over the years how I've started really enjoying going to the national parks. As a matter of fact, my wife and I have already said the next ones up are Yellowstone and Glacier. We're probably going to do those sometime, maybe sans kids, coming up here. Those damn kids, they took me up to Vernal Falls. What are you doing? I'm 50. I felt every inch of my 55 barely hanging on body at that point. That's a hike, man. And even when we got up to the top of Vernal Falls, we were like, we're not going any further, Dad. It's like, why? It's because it's really slippery and you're going to die. I'm like, well, thanks for bringing me here. That's a good idea. You want to just chuck me in the river now? I'll meet you down there below? All right. I go do these things because I enjoy it. And I do talk about it. And I try to take as much time as I can to observe and absorb the local community so I can come back and, like in the 3 o'clock hour today, talk about what made a California Republican a Republican, because that's not an easy question. But, I mean, this person said to me, goes, well, I don't get to go on vacations. I get to go do this stuff, and working, and I sympathize with that. One thing I want to say is that this Powderhorn Park, the chain of lakes, the downtown, the riverfront, St. Paul, Summit Avenue, Lake Minnetonka. We can go. We want to pick. How about Nokomis? Nokomis, Phelan. Phelan's a great lake. We have a lot of great things here, and I want to just tell you how glad I am I'm back. I am. I'm glad I'm back here because I love this town. And yeah, 10 days. Guess what? I'm like, all right, I want to go back to Minneapolis. I love it, this city. And I hope you guys do too. You don't need a lot of money to go have fun because you got this town, and this town kicks ass. This town kicks ass. and I love it so much with all my soul. And I'm never leaving. I'm staying here until the end. That's for sure. Because there are just so many things to do. It is such an awesome place to live. Everything from festivals, fairs, music, lakes, snow. I like the snow. I don't mind winter, especially when I just went out there and experienced what no winter looks like. No, thank you. I'll take some snow in January. I'm good with that. All right. So get out, enjoy Powderhorn Park Association. Once again, Powderhorn Art Fair this weekend. Go enjoy that. No matter what you do, have a wonderful and safe weekend. We are heading out. Mowgli's are going to sing us out today. They got a song called San Francisco. Since I just got back from there, it seemed appropriate. Why not? Have a wonderful weekend. Native Roots Radio is up next. Till Monday. See ya.